And we're starting the last panel of this year of this day, not of the year, and of this seminar, the archaeology of cult and texts, part 2. And we're starting with the presentation of Aleksandra Kubiak-Schneider. Thanks, Aleksandra.
Thank you, Juan, and thank you. I'm very thankful and I'm honored to be today presenting my first results of my ongoing project about the worshippers of Allat and Atargatis in the Near East from the 4th century BCE until 4th century CE, financed by Marie Curie Actions co-fund. It's a shortcut of a paper which I shortly submitted for publication, and I'm awaiting first reviews. My paper offers a new insight into the sanctuaries dedicated to Allat and their socio-geographical locations, and focuses on the archaeology of the cult of the goddess Allat. It concerns the sanctuaries in Palmyra, Hatra, Salkhat, and Wadi Ram, identified by epigraphic sources as related to the cult of the goddess. It investigates also the geographic and topographic context of Northern Arabian inscriptions, which mention the goddess Allat. The goal of my paper is to propose a link between the goddess and the localization of the temples at the crossroads between the drylands, the mountains, and the oases. Allat will be studied as the goddess of the desert. The iconographic attributes, such as male lions, gazelles, and camels, will be set in context of connection to the dryland zones. This paper attempts to be a voice in a discussion on the correlation between the topography, nature, and sacred places in antiquity. The issue of the impact of landscape on the sociocultural and religious aspects of the life and specialization of religions have lately been a topic in research on archaeology and religion, presenting that the physical geography is a component and agent of interaction, place, and ritual. The case of the cult of Allat resounds with the natural topography, rocks, desert, mountains, and dryland zone, which is encircled more or less by me on the map. The places where our temples of Allat are in the marginal zones between the desert and cultivated areas, of course, except the case of most of the Safavidic inscriptions, which are purely in the desert. In the light of the cult of Allat, seen through the lenses of the geography of religions, which deals with religions in their human and physical settings, and the interactions of religions with the landscape, seen as a product of culture. We consider the relation of Allat's places of worship with the edges of settled areas, like, for example, Palmyra and Wadi Ram. The temples with their precincts are the most visible signs of the imprint of religions on the landscape. They interplay with the surroundings, like location of the sanctuaries in Palmyra and Wadi Ram, at the feet of the mountains, or on top of the hill in Salkhat. So this is Palmyra, this is Wadi Ram, and this is Salkhat, and this is just a random picture for setups of the Northern Arabian inscriptions. Yet the sacred space can be situated beyond the walls of the sanctuaries. This is most visible in the numerous Safavidic inscriptions in the desert. By writing prayers and divine names on rocks, people awarded a notion of sacredness to the outside territory. The places of worship are situated explicitly at the borders of the settlement, as you might notice by the plans visible on the slide. The architectural phases of the Temple of Allat in Palmyra, which is here, show the evolution of the sacred place from a small chapel situated at the edge of the city. This is the edge of the city, at the borderland with the dryland zone, to a major sacred place in the urban area, if you remove my my line, which shows that this is really incorporated very late to the Palmyrene urban space. The localization of this sacred place far away from the center of the city and probably firstly placed extramuros should not be surprising. It was close to the semi-desert and area of pastoral livestock grazing, accessible without getting into the city. Staying with Palmyrene topography, the goddess shows herself also on the border near the special place of the dead, her temple, which is exactly here. Do you see my cursor? Do you see my arrow? Yes. So this is the space. This is the space of the temple of Allat, and it's bordering to the necropolis. Here is the so-called the Death Valley, and there are also some tombs located in the neighboring Jebel Muntar, which is here. The topographic setups of all the temples and the Arabian rock inscriptions are related to the drylands, a large arid area characterized by limited precipitation and seasonal steppe vegetation, like low grasses, bushes, etc. Furthermore, they all present a correlation with the terrain, since they are placed by the mountains and rocks. From the available evidence, there is never a hazardous or random choice in the location of a cultic center. A sanctuary, a local of worship, needs to have connections to ritual arrangements, as well as the perception of the deity, his or her theology and competences, and the religious traditions of the place itself. Furthermore, the people shape the landscape, adapting it along with their culture and religions. This is very well illustrated by the plethora of Safaitic graffiti with the prayers for protection, mostly addressed to Allat, written on the rocks, sometimes piled up on the cairns. Sacred places are fitted in to be the part of the environmental background. The method of georeferencing worship provides a deeper understanding of the role of Allat as the protectress of the borderlands and particularly the dryland rocky zones. Palmyra, placed at an oasis in the midst of the dry steppe with the hills and mountains, Talkhat in the center of the volcanic area of Jebel Hawran, characterized by elevations of terrain, Wadi Ram in the Arabian desert, also at an oasis, the topographical setups for the Safaitic texts, as well as the topography of the kingdom of Dadan, all point to the places connected through an essential system of roads and trade routes. People living there or only traversing these areas share the same concepts and experiences of the drylands. The deserts or the dry steppes are challenging territories, while the settlements are always located where there are springs or seasonal wadis which facilitate agriculture. Mainly in the case of locations such as Palmyra and Wadi Ram or Al-Ula, we deal with the oasis and interplay between the rocks, springs, and divine spaces. Reading the cult of Allat through the lenses of geography with her connections of the desert and arid zones, we can figure out that the desert spring supplying a village and forming a resting point on the trade route can be as well her dwelling place, like the case of Wadi Ram and the source Ain al-Shalala, located in the very near to the temple. Being considered as a protector of people traversing the desert, she might be sometimes believed a supplier of potable and irrigational water, a necessary source in a very challenging, rocky and dry terrain. The huge land of the steppes and semi-deserts are used by pastoralists for husbandry of goats, sheep, and camels. The deserts and mountains constitute borders difficult to cross. The setups of the Northern Arabian rock inscriptions and the large quantity of religious texts, which was today talked by Ahmad Al-Jalad, that the concepts of mountains and rocks as something sacred was central, especially when we encounter curses warning against destruction of the engraved texts. This is the graffiti, what we speak about, are more than simple engravings. They are material and visual sign of mobility of the people. The inscription is left in the sacred area, dedicated and surveyed by the gods, the domain of the goddess Allat, who is mostly invoked in those texts. Clearly, the architecturally constructed temples with splendid features and elaborated constructions were not always needed when people had at their disposal the natural Kultlandschaft, as it is the real physical place and space of the deity. As we can notice, the transformations are rather on a very small scale of the natural landscape, giving the meaning for particular features of surrounding environment by implanting some cultic elements, adapting for worship. Landscapes are dynamic cultural products, and people shape them through their activities, beliefs, concepts, and system of values, giving them special meanings. The concept of the rocks and mountains in the religious practices and understanding of these places as sacred influenced also the way the goddess was represented among the pre-Islamic Arabian people, including the Nabateans. The images in Wadi Ram, carved on the rock wall between the temple and the spring Ash-Shalala, provide her image as stone with eyes and a mouth, a sort of a Beetle. Islamic historian, who was also today in the morning mentioned by Ahmed, the historian Ibn al-Kalbi, wrote in the Book of Idols that Allat was worshipped in pre-Islamic Ta'if in the form of cubic stone. Interestingly, the inscriptions from Salkhat attest that the temple accommodated a sacred stone, stele, called in the Nabatean Aramaic as wagar, Waw Gimel Resh. It is not simple aniconism, but this image reveals the real nature of the goddess Allat, in my opinion, as a rock. That would explain the many Sapphitic prayers written to Allat on the rocks in the Hara, with pleas for revenge in case of destruction of the rock inscriptions. This rock was the embodiment of the deity and not simply a taboo against anthropomorphic representation. The anthropomorphism of Allat, as in Palmyra or Hatra, this is the image from Palmyra, this is image from Hatra, these two, and this one is from Hauran, was an adaptation according to local cultural codes. More generally, seen from a psychological perspective, stepping into the desert is akin to getting out of the comfort zone, crossing the particular border of something safe and protected to the vast and rough land. The challenges of the arid areas are not only forced mobility in search for food for the flocks and herds, but also dealing with desert pirates, robbers who menace the herds, travelers, traders, and settlements. The passers-by through these huge land zones also needed to deal with wild nature and predatory animals like lions. Stepping into this area, one needed an extra protection. The connections between the arid land and Allat are also present in the iconography of the associated animals with the goddess. Again, taking the example from Palmyra, the monumental relief of a lion to the left stood at the gate to the sanctuary of Allat. Despite the royal and war ideology behind the image of lions in the visual arts in the Near East, the connection of this animal to the steppe zone is undeniable, as the Asiatic lions were spotted until the 19th century in the area comprising Iraq, Syria, Iran, and Turkey. They became a recurrent motif in the visual arts, often in the relation to the goddesses, like Ishtar, Atargatis, Cybele, Allat, and Artemis. This animal became also the avatar of the wilderness. As you might have noticed, between the Palmyrene's lion paws rests an antelope, Oryx leucoryx. The big cat does not harass the antelope, but protects it. Both animals, lion and the gazelle, are representative of the area, being typical animals for the geographic zone reaching as far south as the Arabian Peninsula. The images of oryxes appear, in addition to the Palmyrene example, in the context of the petroglyphs found in the Arabian desert, left by the people who wrote, among others, the Safavidic inscriptions, and by the Nabateans, most probably in the sacred context. Another animal connects the desert and Allat, the camel. Camels appear in images from Hatra, and they are also depicted in the petroglyphs in the Arabian desert. The images of camels embody the crossing of the desert and the caravan trade in which the people, for example, of Palmyra, as well as of the Arabia, were specialists. So let's go to the conclusions. Until now, scholars have described Allat as the Arabian goddess per se. She was linked with the identity of the people who worshipped her, despite the fact that such a relation is not noted in the ancient inscriptions. This paper, however, presented the goddess Allat from a different angle than the ethnic one. It approached the worship through the geography, the factor which must have interacted with the perception of the deity. The conditions of the dry land were not easy and required extra protection against all obstacles and difficulties. They required a specialized deity for whom the people on the move could address in this particular situation. She must have been the goddess of everyone who had to deal with the arid zones and their wild, unpredictable nature, rather than being connected to a particular ethnic identity. The people who wrote in the northern Arabian scripts could have been the transmitters of the cult in farther places when trade and epigraphic culture flourished. Allat can be seen as the goddess of the borderland, whose sanctuaries connected the settled areas with the traversing zones, mountains or hills, desert and steppe. The presence of Allat at the gateways of the desert or steppe has strong ties with the mobility and migrations of people through this vast and rough territory. The desert character of the goddess did not bring her fame or usefulness in other parts of the ancient world, for example, in Rome or in Greek islands, regions that present different topographies and climates. And I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Aleksandra, for that great presentation.